can I build a park from the ground up? Adding a variety of different dinosaurs into the park. And can I reach 5 stars? And this is me attempting 25 years. Building a zoo. And we start on Isla Nublar. And of course we have an arrival point. Now it's time for the paths. I started setting up the paths and got a design that I was sort of happy with. I wanted to start accommodating the guests, but then I remembered I needed my staff. So we had a response facility and a medic facility. I wanted to use a smaller path on these areas because it looked like staff paths and it just looked a lot better in general. And now it was time to find a dinosaur. I didn't know what dinosaur I wanted, but I knew I wanted a herbivore. After searching for a while, I finally decided on the Diplodocus. Now it was time for the enclosure because I don't think 2 dinosaurs are going to enjoy being in here. So I tried to make it as wide as I could while still having the hatchery there. This is the shape I went for now until I could remove the hatchery, but the dinosaurs were ready to be released. So let's get them in. Now we had the dinosaurs, it was time to do their enclosure to their liking. So straight away we got rid of the hatchery because we no longer need it. And we got rid of the path as well. Now we got on to expanding the territory. Now this was a nightmare. It took me many attempts to get it perfect. So you will see a lot of weird shapes in the making. I got on to adding some foliage for the dinosaurs since that's what they needed. And I did spread it out quite a bit, but kept the back area more of a forest type, and then all the rest of the food was more at the centre, so guests could view the dinosaurs. I had to expand the territory quite a bit. In the middle of this, the guests started to arrive, and we wasn't ready. After a bit more work, the dinosaurs were completely happy, and now I could focus on the guests because there was a lot of guests that started to arrive. So instantly I started placing down amenities for them. After all the guests were taken care of, it was now time to choose a new dinosaur. And I went for these guys because they looked really pretty. I had already made the enclosure, so now it was just time to flatten the ground, make it look a lot nicer and easier to see for the guests. These dinosaurs come in a group of 6, so it was important that they had enough of everything. So I started with the water first. And I was going to put it at the front, but then realised it might block the view. So I put it near the middle, sort of near the end of the enclosure. And made a big water source just so they could all drink if they needed. Now these dinosaurs are quite easy because all they wanted is ground fibre. So it wasn't hard to do their enclosure, and I wanted to do it in little areas just so the food wasn't all over the enclosure. Then I wanted this enclosure to look more lively than the last one, so I went about painting the water with rock. Then I painted the ground sort of like where they would normally hang out, and this enclosure was done. Now it was time to release the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs settled in quite nicely and they loved their new enclosure. Now we had 2 dinosaurs and they were both very happy, and now it was time to focus on the guests. So I ended up adding more amenities and also a hotel, which meant more guests would come into the park, and this really helped with the guest comfort. Moving on to the aviary now, so we have to make sure there's enough space for all the dinosaurs that are going in. Now it was time to choose which one I wanted in here. I went with this one, and now it was time to decorate the enclosure. So we started off with water, since they needed a lot of it, and also fish feeders. Now time for the foliage. Now they wanted forest, so I scattered a tiny bit of forest around just enough so they would like it. And now it was time to paint the ground a bit. So around the water edge I did sand, and I added a few rocks around so they could sit on them. Now they was ready to be released. They already liked their enclosure, but I felt like this enclosure was a bit too big for just 2 of them, so I ended up adding 2 more. Moving away from the aviary, now it's time to go back to the back end of the zoo and to do a new enclosure, and this enclosure was gonna have a carnivore inside instead. So straight away we started painting this enclosure in rock, so it would set aside from the other enclosures. Then of course lowered the ground so it would be easier to see. Now it was time to add the water, and I went for Albertosaurus, and then it was time to improve the enclosure just a little bit. I scattered some rocks around and also added some feeders. The dinosaurs were now ready to be released. It's clear that the dinosaurs need more area and open space, so I quickly got on to doing that for them. I improved the enclosure quite a bit and the dinosaurs were now happy. The guests loved the new addition to the park. We have now reached 3.5 stars rating on the park, which is amazing. So let's get on to improving it so we can get to higher. I started decorating the park a little bit and then thought about adding a lagoon. Of course I had to add the iconic mosasaur into this park. So I chose this area for the lagoon and added all the bits I needed. And since I don't have to add much, I could show you me adding the hatchery. And then of course the guests had to see it, so we had to add the guest seating areas. And she was now ready to be released. So we checked in on her and she was still exploring her territory, as you can see, but I did notice she will need a bit more space, so I do add that in. The guests were complaining they wanted another hotel, so I added that in just here. And then we decided to add some zip lines around the park, just so guests would get more fun out of it and could see the dinosaurs more easily. I then thought to attract more guests to do an enclosure right next to the arrival point, just adding little compies as you can see here. But I did have a bit of an issue, they wanted more area and more population, so I quickly fixed that. And the park was coming along quite nicely, and we was almost at 5 stars. So we was already really close to 5 stars. Off camera I built a new enclosure that has, we're interrupting the fight. Anyway, this enclosure looks really nice and it is really spacious for them. It has 4 dinosaurs in here, so you'll see them now. Here they all are. Oh. Now I wanted to get the guest appeal up more, so I added a new guest attraction, which was a VR one, and we had it round the new enclosure. After spending some time on figuring out what to do, I ended up with a new enclosure and wanted to add 1 more dinosaur. I've always liked these dinosaurs, so I wanted to add them. And now it was on to decorating their enclosure. And I wanted it to look like, sort of like a desert area. Then I had to add the viewing galleries, and then before I release them I have to add their food, and they were ready to be released. Whilst they were settling in, it was time to focus on the guests and to make sure they was happy all around the park. And it must have paid off because we reached 5 stars. And it was a great journey. So the park was a success. I hope you all enjoyed watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.